I got a booty. I be shaking it. So of course people are like, oh yeah, you definitely not a virgin. I'm like, crazy. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about body count. And for the record, I'm gonna be pretty transparent in this video about my personal relationship, being a late bloomer in the world of sex, and just some common like misconceptions and some narratives that can be a little bit damaging about body count and things of that nature, right? So of course, one particular female artist comes to mind when we talk about body count, and it's probably because she references it in a couple of songs. Latto has gotten a lot of backlash, a lot of compliments and complaints from men and women and people alike talking about her body count references. She's made 2 references in 2 songs, and I feel like there have been other songs where I feel like she has made some kind of reference to not having sex with a lot of people. But of course, everybody knows body count so low, I might say I'm a virgin. And in another freestyle, she said everything about me big, but my body count, something to that effect, right? And so of course, a lot of people are definitely bashing her. Some are actually, assuming and claiming that she's lying. And this is something that I dealt with, and like I said, I'm gonna get into like my personal story, but it's just so funny, the mix of comments that was under this post. I remember someone said, that's less than most of us can say, good for her, I'm proud of her, while some women are like, who cares? Why are we talking about body count? Why is this still relevant in 2025? Like, it's just so funny that this was something that millennials definitely coined the term for, but it's still something that people across like Gen Z are still discussing to this day, right? So let's talk about some of the things, the struggles that someone with a low body count or someone that is a virgin may experience. So I am 33 years old, and I was a virgin until I was 29. 0.99999. Like literally right before my 30th birthday, I had sex for the first time. I don't like to say I lost my virginity because I don't like that we talk about virginity like it's some crown jewel. So let's just start with how I felt being a virgin all throughout college. Now, first of all, one of the most annoying things was that two things were really annoying about it. Okay, so 2 things were really annoying about being a virgin. One is that nobody believed me. And 2 was that people assumed that I saw my virginity as some kind of crown and some kind of like holier than thou status, which I've never projected, especially because all of my friends were sexually active. What would I look like being a good friend to them and also looking down on them for being sexually active? That literally never happened. If anything, I just couldn't wait to hear their stories. I had questions. I've always been that kind of curious person. But these were probably the 2 most annoying things about being a virgin. And what I realized, and hopefully this is some like good advice to anyone out there that may be in their 20s or even in their 30s that's still a virgin, is that I highly identified with it. And I remember when I was young, I had an uncle who was a deacon at the time tell me, please remember that you're Marsha, not Marsha the virgin. And I never realized how much I led with that identity-wise. I thought it was something that for sure was special because people told me it was special, but I thought it was something I had to lead with because I was afraid that if I didn't tell a guy that, he would think that I was teasing him or he would think that I was leading him on. So I'd led with that, not realizing that ended up being my downfall in a lot of like situations. But it was really annoying because people started to make assumptions about the kind of person I was because I would say I'm a virgin, but if I was partying, they would assume that I was lying. Because I knew football and hung out with a lot of football players and had a lot of them as my friends, they assumed that I was fucking a football team. Because I knew a lot of Greeks and because I like associated myself pretty closely with the Qs, they thought I was fucking all the Qs. And I will never forget, it was like my freshman year at Florida State. This girl had like said something about me and someone was like, no, she's a virgin. And she was like, where? In the nose? And I was like, and of course at the time I'm absolutely like amused because I'm like, I'm not getting no kind of action. I'm not getting no kind of play. I literally had my first kiss, my first like tongue kiss, I don't know why I just did that, but I had my first tongue kiss when I was 18. I still have the diary somewhere. Like, I literally wrote down the date. Like, it's so crazy. And people just made these assumptions because of the kind of lifestyle I live. Now, one thing about it, two things for sure. I'm from Miami, okay? And I'm Haitian, okay? Caribbean girls, Haitian girls, and girls from Miami, we're naturally lit. We naturally love being at parties. We're the life of the party. We go to parties and we actually dance. I got a booty. I be shaking it. So, of course, people are like, oh, yeah, you definitely not a virgin. I'm like, crazy. Crazy because I am. And so I hated the other aspect of it was the holier than thou thing. People thought that I was better than them, or women. I got hate automatically from women because they assumed that I was lying, or they were like, oh, so what, you think you better than us? Never said that. And it's funny now being a mental health professional and knowing that people project. I never realized that a lot of people were insecure about maybe how many people they had sex with, and they weren't confident about their sexual history and who they were as women that were sexually active or inactive, that they would have to project and say something like that. So it was pretty frustrating. But people assumed that I had a high horse, and I honestly hated telling people I was a virgin. I think it seemed pretty ironic to people that I would lead with that because I was afraid for someone to not really want me for me. So I was like, let me just let you know who I am. Look, I'm a virgin. I honestly thought it was more of a burden than it was a crown jewel or something really special, because I started to run into a lot of guys that would tell me that they don't want to date me. And I thought that I would be alone forever. And because I was so obsessed with being in a relationship and finding a guy, I was definitely a young little pick-me, raised by a big pick-me. More about that in another video. I was concerned that me being a virgin would hinder me finding love, because a lot of the men that I dealt with, they didn't want to continue to deal with me. And while that is a positive, there are some positives, and we'll get to that in a second, to having a low body count or being a virgin, because you get to weed men that only care about sex out. I saw it as a negative because I felt like, wow, like, here I am in my 20s and everyone's having like these pretty average, normal 20-something-year-old experiences, and I feel like I am not getting those experiences. And I thought it was because I wasn't having sex. Granted, now hindsight being 2020, I understood it's because I didn't lead with confidence. It's because I identified with being a virgin more than I identified with all my other wonderful traits. I wasn't as secure and confident in myself. So there are a lot of reasons, and I wouldn't say it's because of my virginity. It's definitely because I did not have a good handle on who I was as a person. But I remember I had this guy that I was like so into. I remember him saying that like, I should just go ahead and do it. It's not like God won't forgive me. Like, I remember another guy that I was obsessed with was like, we could have been great, but you don't want to have sex. And I'm like, and so I started to really wonder, like, how important is sex to a relationship? And I think it would be completely naive, especially as someone who has now had sex, I think it would be completely naive to say that sex is not important to a relationship. I don't think it's the most important thing, however. It is important to the physical connection, but I do think, it's something that can be improved upon, especially if you have a strong emotional connection and whatnot. Now, of course, there's some people that will argue if you don't have the hardware and you can't get hard there, that you're gonna just have some issues in that department. But ultimately, I do believe that at one point or another, I started to wonder that if I was just missing something that was incredibly crucial to having a healthy relationship with someone in my 20s. Hindsight being 2020, take it from me, it is not the most important thing. If someone cannot commit to you because you're not wanting to have sex at this point of time in your life, they're just not the person for you. Let me be the one to tell you this now. They are not the person for you, and I want you to free yourself from feeling like you have to commit yourself to that relationship. So again, here I am in my mid-20s now, right? Mid-20s. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, where I am around way more Black people than I ever was back in college in Tallahassee, Florida. I have way more resources than I ever did when I was living at home in Miami, Florida. Why am I not having sex? It was still, and I don't think I actually covered this. So I definitely was a Christian in my earlier years. Right now, I do not align with any one religion. I am more so spiritual. So a huge part of my decision to be a virgin was definitely partly because of my religious beliefs, right? I believe that, you're supposed to be a virgin until you find a person that you want to marry. But what a lot of people did not know about me was that I really wanted to save myself for the person that I loved. And anytime a guy would ask me what I'm waiting for, I would tell him, like, I want to be in love first. Ultimately, I'd like to be married, but I knew hands down, I wanted to experience love. I wanted to be in the safest environment possible to experience sex, and I never wanted to have sex without that being in the equation. Spoiler alert, love was not in any of the instances in which I've had sex in my 30s, unfucking fortunately. And when it comes to my regret, do I regret waiting to have sex? It's a yes and no for me, okay? I'm turning 33 this year, and I had sex right before I turned 30. So it's almost been a full 3 years, and I can say that I understand why so many people told me when I was a virgin that it's absolutely not worth it, because they, I think people make sex out to be this like grandiose things, and I think people dramatize it so much and they make it such a big deal that you don't even realize how short-lived it can be and how short-lived men make it out to be because they're more so selfish. You don't realize that it's better when you have a more deeper emotional connection to a person, and it's not just like just something that's just happening. And again, I think because it is a transfer of energy, and it is something that for a long time I've made so special, it's easy to experience some form of, at least for me, disappointment when you realize you're sharing yourself with somebody that really has no intentions on really dropping an anchor with you. So I would say that if you are someone that you love, and you're a hopeful, romantic, and that you crave a monogamous relationship, don't rush to have sex unless you are going to have sex with someone that is going to be a friend to you beyond anything else. Friendship is, I think, essential to a healthy relationship. And if you don't feel like you have that in a person, please don't rush into it. Please don't rush into it, because I think it hurts when I think about the men that I've had sex with and thinking about like if I were stranded right now, who would come and get me? Who could I rely on right now if I was going through a hard time? If I had to be put out my apartment, would any of these men come to my aid? And I think about those things. Now, there are people who may argue, okay, none of that should matter. You should have sex because you want to have sex. Good for you. Like, if you feel like that, let that be the hill that you die on. I personally am going to die on the hill that I want to have sex with someone that cares about me as a person, especially as a woman, because I just feel like sex versus sex, we're just the more vulnerable party. And I think it's so important that you just share yourself with someone that you feel actually cares about you. I don't know. That's just me. The reason why I would say yes and no is because I believe there's a level of discernment I could have never had without experiencing sex and understanding what it feels like to have sex, to what it feels like afterwards. And there's some other things that I don't think I was really privy to. Some of the downsides of not having a lot of sexual experience or being a virgin, I felt, were being oblivious to certain things that would become incredibly important once you are sexually active. Obviously, a lot of us have had sex ed, and we understand the basics of sexual health. Like, we know that using a condom makes you super safe or safer. However, it's not the safest. We know that if you want to be the safest ever, you absolutely should just be completely abstinent, because there is always something that can be transferred knowingly and unknowingly. My goodness. But one of the niche things that I didn't know, because I didn't spend years having sex like a lot of my friends did, was that, for example, and I didn't have a personal experience with this, but for example, if you and a guy are having unprotected sex, and first of all, you can get pregnant off of pre-ejaculate, right? Those early fluids before he actually fully comes. Not only can you get pregnant off of that, but if he happens to come inside you and you take a plan B, if you are ovulating, shit is null and void. What the fuck do you mean? When I heard that, I had to clutch my pearls, because look at me now. It's more sexually active. It's 2024, 2025, and I'm in a state where abortion is illegal after 6 weeks, and so many people do not know that they're pregnant until way after 6 weeks. What a world. And I feel like there's so many things that I was just not privy to, because it wasn't my reality to be having sex. Even with me being the kind of inquisitive, curious person to ask my friends about sex and their experiences, there was just so much that I didn't learn until I was I guess it's kind of like on the job training. There's certain things that someone can prepare you for about the job. You can read the job description, but when you're in the paint, when you're clocked in, there's just certain things you're more privy to. So another thing that I think was a downside of waiting as long as I did and not being as active is I'm still getting to know myself. Okay, likes and dislikes. I do hear people say, hey, there's a lot of exploration you can do by yourself. Hey, I don't know all about that, okay? And where do you learn about how to explore yourself? I don't know. Like, I think you have to kind of take some, adventures into certain sex stores to learn about what kind of toys are out there to kind of learn what you like. But even then, you're learning by something that's battery operated or charged. How are you going to know exactly what you like when it comes to something being inside you? Now, of course, you might say, well, duh, you can actually get a dildo. But I've always heard from people, it's so different. Thrusting and speeds and tempos, and do you like when someone talks? How am I supposed to know if I like when someone talks if I'm always by myself? What am I gonna say? Oh, girl, you doing that thing? Like, I think there's just so much that you do not know about when you are not that sexually experienced or you have not had sex at all, that I just want you to have grace on yourself for it. Like, don't be hard on yourself if you are having more of a late start, because again, at 32, I am still figuring out a lot of things, and I don't find any shame about that anymore because I know that I haven't had enough experiences to know it all. But this is why I'm still predicating a lot of things on I just want to be with the right partner, because when I'm with the right partner, I'm going to feel safe to explore. It's so funny that I haven't had that much sex, but I used to make a lot of random YouTube content, and I think I actually will make this video available so you can see. I think I was like 26 or 27 or maybe 28, and I did a video about the BDSM test, and I took the test, and I was like, what the fuck is all of this? And it's just so funny that I'm not as vanilla as I used to be, but it's only because I got a little bit more comfortable and I've been in the environment enough times to be like, maybe I do like this, maybe I do like that, but there's still so much I do not know. When I think about the experiences I've had and I hear my friends who are far more experienced, I'm like, damn. So sometimes I do feel a little bit disadvantaged in that department, but the way you can kind of flip that and reframe it is that, like, man, when you're with the right person, you have plenty of time to explore. It's not like your vagina expires, okay? So I think some other things. So I said, obviously this was the biggest thing for me, and probably one of the more emotional sides of this topic. I'll probably get into a little bit deeper in another video, but being so familiar with the sexual environment that you are comfortable being vocal. Now, there are people that have been sexually active for decades and they still have a hard time being vocal. So I'm not going to assume that everyone that's had, several sexual partners and a lot of experiences are perfectly vocal. That can just be a personal thing. But I saw that for myself. I didn't realize there were certain things I can speak out on. I was actually very nervous. I remember one guy, I didn't quite enjoy the sex, but I just was like, oh, let me just close my eyes and maybe he'll just think I'm like really enjoying myself. I said very long ago, I'm never gonna fake it ever again. I faked an orgasm one time, and it was when I was getting head. And I was like, you know what? That actually sucked. Never doing that again. And now you will be met with my silence. And you'll just know this ain't it, okay? But I remember one guy, I ended up telling him, yeah, I didn't really enjoy it. He was like, yo, why didn't you tell me that? And I was like, people talk during sex? People like communicate? This is the thing? You didn't ask. And it's like, these are things I wasn't like really privy to, because again, I started having sex right before I turned 30. Like, hello, so of course I was having oral sex prior to, okay, my first oral sex experience was literally before my first kiss. Scandalous, craziness. I remember being so sad about that. I was like, oh my God, I cried. I cried my first time getting head. One, it sucked, but then two, I just felt like God would be mad at me, and like, what was the point of that? And I just hated that I had like gotten head for the first time and didn't have my first kiss yet. So I was really sad. It's so funny to think about now, my God. I definitely still sometimes wish I would have waited, because of how special I feel sex is, how special it is to share my body. We have to be clothed in this world, and to be nude to me is so sacred because of how everyone doesn't get to see that. And I just don't think everyone should get access to you. And and I when I look at the partners that I've had, there's not a single person on that list that I feel I love and that I feel loves me and really cares about my safety and would right now like drop everything to come help me if I needed it. And honestly, I don't want to have those experiences with people that I don't feel would be there for me in that way. So there's a part of me that I've had some very uncomfortable experiences relative to not being vocal enough, but also not being heard when I was vocal, right? And I think there are a lot of women who share in those kinds of experiences who won't outwardly and explicitly say that they've been raped, right? But that they will say that they've been in very uncomfortable positions where they felt coerced, right? So that's really unfortunate. And I feel like I protected myself from like a world of pain when I did wait, except that ignorance was it really was bliss. It really was. But I think now there's a level of discernment that I have. There's a level of confidence, not by a long shot, but I have more confidence than when I wasn't at all. But at the end of the day, who cares? Like, body count is this number that people start to obsess about, and it's crazy. It's only a factor largely for women. I think men get clowned if they haven't had enough sex, and women get clowned if they have too much sex, and it's just really stupid. Someone was talking about this on Lotto's post, and they were like, because they were, the claim is that she's had 4 bodies, and someone was like, yeah, 4 bodies that hit over 30 times, and I'm like, I hope so. I would. What I hate about my experiences that are sexual is that I've had sex with one person one time. Like when I think about the people I've had sex with, I'm like, that was one time, that was one time, that was one time. And it's like, I would rather have sex with one person multiple times because that gives me more experience. It gives me more, ground to explore. So like, why are we trying to clown that she has 4 bodies and probably one guy hit her 30 times? I hope she's having lots of good sex with whoever she's with. I hope people who have sexual partners enjoy encountering each other more than one time. I think that's awfully healthy. I don't know, it's just really crazy. But one thing I will say, this is my only critique, I would say, is that I think it's damaging to talk about body count in this holier than thou way, or in this way where it's a flex, because it's keeping women in that same small box of you should only have sex with a couple people. The fact that she's getting praised for only having sex with 4 people, I don't think it's that important. And I say this as someone that waited until they were damn near 30. It's not that important. Is it special? I think it's special, sacred, and private. Does it have to be a public fucking known fact? I don't think so. Because then I feel like people start to think that they are better than other people, or some people start to feel like they're inferior because they didn't meet this criteria. And I feel like it's not fair because this criteria only applies to women. So, wanting to flex about having a low body count, it's really nobody's business. And it's kind of like, okay, like, and that was something I never liked, when people try to be like, oh my God, she's a virgin. I used to be like, yo, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm leading with I'm a virgin because I'm afraid to blindside somebody in a dating experience. I'm not leading with it because I think y'all should kiss the fucking ring. Like, get the fuck out of here, So I kind of just don't like that there's an aspect of, or there's a sentiment, a very subliminal sentiment that like, you hoes can't touch me. Like, I haven't had sex with people. I haven't had sex with so many people. I've only had sex with a couple of people. Like, it doesn't matter how many people you've had sex with. Like, what makes you a special, top tier, high value woman should not have anything to do with how many people you've had sex with. Matter of fact, I've heard men don't really care. And I've heard men say this. I think men, for their egos, want to believe that they are of a few, but the funny thing is, men typically want the women that other men have had and conquered. So crazy. Conquered. Hate even saying that. And so ultimately, men truly don't care. Even if you're a virgin or you have a low body count, they don't believe you. So what is the point of flexing this? Like, I don't know. Again, not saying that people shouldn't be proud of themselves for not having as much sex in a hypersexual culture. If that's your thing, cool. If that's what makes you proud of yourself, I want you to find more things to be proud of. That's just that. And I say this as someone that's no longer a virgin, that waited a very long time. I realized this shit does not matter. I barely remember how old I am. Like, I don't think, I personally have a list, but I don't think people need to have a list of how many partners they've had. Like, what does any of that even mean when you find your person? If my man were to be like, so how many men have you had sex with? I'd be like, that's a really interesting question. It makes me wonder what you think about the men I've had sex with and how you're judging yourself according to whatever that number is, and compared to these men. Like, why is this relevant? I don't know. Anyways, this went kind of all around and in a circle, and it wasn't really like super organized, but hopefully you enjoyed the dialogue. Please talk to me down in the comments. How do you feel about the whole body count narrative? Do you think it matters? Would you ask your partner about their body count, male or female? If you were a late bloomer, what were your experiences like? Do you have any regrets? Again, I'm so honestly, I wish I waited, but then honestly, there's a wisdom I have that I wouldn't have had. So, yeah, I don't know. I hope that the more we talk about these things, they become less taboo and people can feel just more comfortable as a virgin, as a person that's only had a few sexual experiences, to talk about these things without fear of any judgment. Even if you are a hypersexual person, there shouldn't be any judgment. I don't care how many partners you have and how many sexual experiences you've had, as long as you're safe and you're not putting anybody's livelihood and their health at jeopardy. Like, that's all that should matter. So that's it for me. Love you guys. Chat with me down in the comments, and until next time, bye.